Hi, my name is Bhumika, and in this lesson, we're going to be learning about the mechanism of hormone action. We have already done the glands and some hormones that they secrete, and that they secrete these hormones into the bloodstream. But how do these hormones they bring about the physiological change that they ought to? So let's get started. Hormones produce their effects on target tissues by binding to specific proteins called hormone receptors located in the target tissues only. Hormone receptors present on the cell membrane of the target cell are called membrane bound receptors, and the receptors which are present inside the target cell are called intracellular receptors, mostly nuclear receptors present in the nucleus. Binding of a hormone to its receptor leads to the formation of a hormone receptor complex. Each receptor is specific to one hormone only, and hence specific receptors are present. Hormone receptor complex formation leads to certain biochemical changes in the target tissue, and the target tissue metabolism and hence physiologic functions are regulated by the hormones. So basically, this whole thing says that the hormones that they are able to produce their effects on the target tissues by binding to some proteins. These proteins are termed as the receptor, which are specifically for a particular hormone. So these are hormone receptors which are present in the target tissues. Now the receptors, the hormone receptors which are present on the cell membrane, they are termed as membrane bound receptors, and the ones which are present inside the cell membrane and the cytosol, these are known as the intracellular receptors. So mostly some of these are the nuclear receptors which are present in the nucleus. So binding of a hormone to its receptor, it gives rise to the formation of a hormone receptor complex. Right, a hormone molecule will come and it combines with the receptor and it gives rise to the hormone receptor complex. And each receptor, of course, it's specific to one hormone and only one of it, and hence the receptors are very specific. So as such, when these hormone receptor complexes are formed, they bring about biochemical changes that finally brings about the physiologic change. On the basis of the chemical nature, hormones can be divided into these groups. The first one is the polypeptide of the protein hormones such as insulin, glucagon, pituitary hormone, hypothalamic hormones, etc. So these are called polypeptide hormones because these are all proteins, right? Then we have the steroids. We just did the steroids in the previous lesson. The cortisol, testosterone, estradiol, that means estrogen, and then progesterone. Then we also have iodothyronin, which is the thyroid hormone, and then we also have the amino acid derivative such as the epinephrine or adrenaline. Okay, so hormones which interact with the membrane bound receptors normally do not enter the target cell, but they generate second messengers such as cyclic AMP, IP3, calcium divalent, etc., which in turn regulate the cellular metabolism. So if I am supposed to triggering a hormone receptor complex right onto the membrane, this hormone receptor complex which is formed onto the membrane will kind of trigger second messengers which are present inside. Okay, this hormone will not enter inside the cell if it's supposed to be binding to a membrane bound receptor, so it will kind of trigger the internal second messengers such as CA2 plus and etc., which will in turn regulate the cellular changes, regulate whatever changes are supposed to take place. Okay, and then hormones which interact with intracellular receptors such as the steroid hormones, iodothyronins, etc., they mostly regulate gene expression, okay, or chromosome function by interaction of the hormone receptor complex with the genome. Cumulative biochemical action results in the physiologic and developmental effects. So the hormones which are supposed to be intracellular, they usually have to work onto the genome, right? So we did that mostly. Most of them are the nuclear receptors, so that is the reason why they regulate gene expression or chromosomal function by the interaction of the hormone receptor complex with the genome. So let's try to understand the functioning of the peptide hormone um, through the help of a diagram. So let's say we have a hormone here such as FSH. Okay, now this hormone comes here and it attaches itself to its own specific receptor. So this is the cell membrane, right? So this one, FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone, is of course a membrane bound hormone. So here we have this whole thing is what? A hormone receptor complex. Now this thing binds itself here. So what response will it produce inside the cell? It will generate the second messenger, the secondary messenger, and as such cyclic AMP or Ca2 plus are triggered to produce some biochemical responses, and finally they will produce physiological responses, which in this case would be growth of the ovaries. Now for the steroid hormones, we have a hormone here such as estrogen. So this molecule will go directly inside the cell membrane. It will reach the nucleus right here and will bind to its receptor to form the receptor hormone complex, and as such this complex will trigger the genome of the particular cell to produce mRNA would produce proteins, and these proteins would bring about the physiological responses. Okay, so that's all for the lesson and mechanism of hormone action. If you have any queries, then you can ask me in the Q&A section. I hope I made myself clear into this chapter. Thank you for watching. Please rate, review and recommend this lesson, and follow me as well.